There you go. So hi, everyone. I'm Rabbi Chuck Briskin from Shirley Congregation. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's great to be joined by my colleagues, Rabbi Aaron Gaber, Rabbi Diana Miller, and Carrie Matez, who Carrie leads the Kehillah of the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. Rabbi Gaber, the Rabbi Brothers of Israel, and Rabbi Miller at Kehillat HaNahar, the little shul by the river. I think that is all who are here. So. We were having a conversation among the clergy a few weeks ago about perhaps bring someone in to talk about what they've seen and experienced in Israel. And I just was kind of part of the conversation. I was like, well, I've been there. I've got some things to say. But I think unlike a lot of other folks, I've actually had the opportunity to visit Israel twice now since October 7th. I had the great privilege of representing Bucks County on a Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia Rabbinic Solidarity Mission that happened in early November. And the moment the wheels on El Al lifted up, I was thinking to myself, how do I get back to Israel? Because I actually wanted to do something. And so I volunteered along with 4 other members of my congregation, some of whom were here on this call as well, volunteered for a 4-day volunteer and solidarity mission with the Jewish National Fund. And so what I've prepared for tonight is sort of a little bit of a blending of both trips, trying to compare, contrast Israel in November and Israel today, and also share some of the just insights that I've gleaned from these trips. I'm happy just to answer any questions, and also if other folks have already had the opportunity to go to Israel on any sort of solidarity or volunteer mission, please feel free to share your experiences as well. Most of what I have is, I've said before that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So it's got a pretty comprehensive slideshow to share with some commentary along the way. I do apologize for those who are in the congregation who saw me speak back in November. Some of this is taken from that, but I also have plenty of new stuff to share as well. So without further ado, I'm going to share the screen and hopefully this will all be working. Let's see. All right, got the screen? There we go. Okay, so two different versions of what I saw. So my first trip, this was a view from my room in Tel Aviv. Second trip, we were actually staying in the desert in Sde Boker, which is a community that is probably about 45 minutes south of Beersheba. I have a picture on the map in just a moment. And we were there because we were, a lot of the work that we were doing was in the south of Israel. So one location is in the middle of everything that's happening in Tel Aviv. One is a very remote and isolated community, so it's hard to get a sense of what's happening around. Both provided very different and unique experiences. So when I was there in November, and even a couple of weeks ago, what you saw pretty much in the cities, in Tel Aviv especially, that's where we were for the most part, was a combination of Israeli flags and this great sense of unity and patriotism with the words Yachad Ninatzeach, together we will win, together we will prevail, and then everywhere reminders about the hostages to bring them home. And here's a sign in Tel Aviv that is in English, so clearly they are speaking to both an Israeli audience and an English-speaking and an American audience as well. What we saw in Israel in November, and more November than now, was just almost every billboard had some sort of photograph of the situation of bringing the hostages home, and especially when many of the children and women and elderly were held hostage. These were the pictures that dominated the landscape in Tel Aviv. One of the things that is very noticeable, I'm going to play a little bit of it. You don't need sound for this, but one of the things that was very noticeable is when I got off the plane, both times, the airport was quiet. It was busier in January than it was in November, but it was still quiet. There was, if you've been to Israel before, and oftentimes there's a long line that is kind of snaking its way through the passport control. When we got there, there was like 2 lanes open and very few people, very few non-Israelis who were heading over there, which kind of still tells you, what's kind of the situation that's happening. But what you're greeted with when you go to Israel and when you leave is, if you've ever gone down that long hallway from, hopefully this is, is this playing for you guys? Someone put in the chat if it's playing. I hope it is. Okay, I'm assuming that it is.
Yes, Rabbi, it's playing.
It is.
Okay, so basically on both sides of this wide hallway are pictures, and this was from November, of pictures of those who were and who are held hostage. And I think just in a moment, you'll actually be able to see a longer view. I just recorded this the entire way down. This is about a 2-minute walk, and both sides. And this is what you see when you are arriving Israel, and also on the opposite side when you are leaving Israel as well. What was different this time is that wherever one of the hostages had been returned, it was taken off the post. So there were fewer posts that had pictures of the hostages, but it was still clearly that predominant image, really the first image that you get when you land in Israel. This keeps on going on and on and on, but I think you get the gist. Oops, hold on a second. There we go. This is Tel Aviv in November, and I wasn't in, except for a visit to Hostage Square, was not in Tel Aviv this past trip, so I can't really compare and contrast what it looked like. But in November, when all the hostages were still being held, what you saw, this is Dizengoff Street. If you walk Dizengoff, which is the main thoroughfare in Tel Aviv, you would see these oversized stuffed teddy bears, blindfolded, blood-stained, dirty, with pictures of a child that was kidnapped. Just that ever-present reminder. And in Dizengoff Square, where the big fountain is, it was basically an entire shrine is not the right word, but not memorial necessarily either, but just a reminder of all the hostages who were still being held captive. There were pictures of them. There was artwork, other mementos from different hostages. You can kind of see just how it just dominated this area. And like I said, I'm not sure if it is still quite this way as it was back in November, but certainly for me, this made a very, very powerful, really first impression. When I landed in Israel on that Sunday back in November, we had some time between arriving in our first perm at the hotel, and I went down to Dizengoff just to get a sense of what was happening in the city. And this was pretty much everywhere. It was clearly just the hostages was really what was on everyone's mind first and foremost. So in that first trip, we had the opportunity to meet with a number of experts and pundits. This is, and Alon Ben David, I believe his name is. It's my captions are covered up right here, but Alon Ben David is a military journalist for Channel 13. This is a very Israeli thing. When he came in and he was talking to Michael Balaban, the head of the Federation, and about his arm, Michael said, "What happened to your arm?" He said, "This is so Israeli." "Oh, it was a silly thing. I was in Gaza yesterday and fell off a tank and broke my arm." But this was really, I think, on the second day, kind of showing what was happening there. And what I was really I guess what was really troubling, and it's still troubling today. So what he said back then, which is still the feeling today, is that nobody knows. No, he couldn't answer what's going to happen the day after. November, if anyone asked what's going to happen the day after, no one had an answer. And if you ask today what's going to happen the day after, still 100 and some odd days later, still no one has an answer. And we also got to meet with Lucy Aharish, who is also she's a Palestinian-Israeli journalist. She's actually married to an Israeli actor who actually plays on Fauda. And she has a very complicated life, being a Palestinian Israeli living in Israel, working in Israel. And she was sharing a lot about her fears and the concerns for herself and for all Israeli Arabs who are afraid to speak Arabic on the street, who are very concerned that they will be subject to attacks and violence and abuse. And it's it is a very scary time as well for 20% of Israel's citizens. the first night that we were in Tel Aviv back in November, we met with two people who were related to hostages, and this was at day 33, and hold on a second. This person right here, and I'm sorry, I know that I have her name on the down below, but my captions are covering it up. This is Inbar Goldstein, and she lived in Kfar Aza, and as we know about Kfar Aza, is one of the many kibbutzim along the border between Gaza and Israel. It's known as the Gaza envelope. That was just brutally attacked and decimated, along with the places that have become known in our etched into our consciousness, whether it's Kibbutz Be'eri, whether Re'im and the Nova Music Festival, Nachal Oz, Sderot, again, Kfar Aza, the towns of Ofakim, and just hearing firsthand the stories and the pain about what it's like to be a family member who has someone held hostage. It was just painful and gut wrenching. I actually have a picture of, this is her sister-in-law, excuse me, Daron Steinbrecher, and I have her picture hanging on my on my door in my office as a constant reminder. And when I was back in Israel, that was, I mean, somehow when you still saw 132 photographs of people held hostage, somehow my eyes always were drawn to, I just always saw her. And she's still being held hostage. So while I don't know her personally, just having met a relative of hers brought that pain and that fear and that anger so much closer. But the stories we heard is those who escaped mainly because they took a right instead of a left out of the kibbutz, went in the opposite direction. So many of the stories were of just sheer luck. One thing that I what I'd say just before, which I forgot to mention before, is that just the overall feeling. There were 3 feelings in November, and those feelings are still being held today. Is just which I think captures much of Israel. There is first the remorse for what happened and how it happened, and we still will wait until after either during the war, after the war, to find out the mistakes that the IDF and that the Israeli government made to allow this to happen. So the remorse and regret. There is a tremendous amount of steely resolve. People were then are still very much behind the IDF. I know that some of the what's happening with the government has shifted a little bit, or maybe a lot since November, but there's a tremendous amount of resolve, and there's a tremendous amount of resilience. In fact, that was a thing that was probably the most uplifting and the really kind of helped me better understand the situation, was just the resilience of Israelis throughout all of this difficulty. In this last trip, we had a chance to drive. We were staying in Sde Boker down in the south, and we were making our way up to Kibbutz Erez, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Kibbutz Erez is on the border of Gaza, so literally on the border. And we drove up Route 232, which I may have been on once at some point several years ago, but this is the road that basically goes alongside the border of Gaza, and this was the road of death. This is where so many cars were torched. So many of the Hamas terrorists were just ambushing Israelis, killing them, taking them captive, burning their cars. And we have a couple of pictures along this way. So we were driving up. This is right outside of Re'im, where the Nova Music Festival was held. We did not go into these places. We did not visit the kibbutzim. We did not visit Nachal Oz, or we did not go into Re'im, but certainly we were very close, and even driving by, you could still see, remnants of, just charred road, and what we also saw were these shelters. Many of us heard about the shelters where Israelis tried to take shelter. These are typically used when there are rockets coming in. That's what Israelis were used to. The rockets being shot in from Gaza, the siren would go off. You would go into one of these shelters. You would stay there for about 15 minutes, get the all clear sign, and you would leave. These shelters, sadly and tragically just became really prisons for death, because as Israelis huddled in there, the Hamas terrorists would come in and they would throw grenades in, and they would shoot at it. You can see on this one over here, you can see all the bullet holes that are where it was shot at. And there were also these shelters which are lined all up and down the road, 232 and in the area near Gaza. All are very artistic. You can see this one was I guess funded by the JNF, as a lot of things down in that area were. But this particular day, this was just it was a death trap. And this one right here, the shelter which is in Sderot, this was the shelter where from which Hirsch, Paul, and Goldberg was injured and captured. Hirsch, Paul, and Goldberg, of course, is one of the more better known hostages because of the relentless work that his mother and his father and his community is doing to keep his name very much in the forefront of our thoughts. He's an American dual citizen, and apparently he lost part of his arm in a terrorist attack, and God knows how his injuries have been taken care of. And one of the big features of when you're in Israel right now is not how far away you are in terms of distance from a place, but how far away you are in terms of seconds from how long it takes you to find shelter. So there was an app that we were using that if a siren went off, it would let us know how much time we have to find shelter. So it's anywhere from where we were here. I forget where we were at this point, but we were a minute away to 45 seconds to as little as 15 seconds, which is basically really no time to find shelter. This past time that I was there were no sirens, no need to find shelter. When I was there the first time, we were in Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv is a very very luxurious and very calm 90 seconds to finish your coffee, finish the email, and then find shelter. And really the last night that we were leaving, it was right in city center. We had just finished eating dinner. We had to walk into, everyone just had to pile into the stairwell of a restaurant. And it was, very calm and orderly. But then again, we had 90 seconds to do that. It would have been different had we been closer to the border. Okay, I need to take off the captions. Give me a second here. Oh, okay, so this is, as you see, this is Rafi Bibian, and he is the head of security for Sderot Negev in the regional council. And this was one of many Israelis that we met, both in my November trip and the January trip, each of whom has a story to tell, some more harrowing than others. His is quite harrowing. The Sderot Negev Regional Council oversees several of the kibbutzim and moshavim, the farming collectives known in this area, known as the Gaza envelope. He's also the head of security for his kibbutz. On the morning of October 7th, he was home and he got some wind of some attack from Gaza. He did not know the extent of it. Most people that morning thought that a few people may have infiltrated. There was something small happening. No one knew the extent of it. So he went out to check the perimeter of the kibbutz. He turned out onto road 232, which, as I said before, was where the bulk of the carnage took place. And he saw a line of about 42 cars. They were filled with terrified Israelis who were speeding up the road. So when he was told what was happening, he went into action. He told the drivers to follow him, and they sped north towards Sderot on 232, only to be met by another Israeli who had been injured traveling towards him, saying, turn around, the terrorists are up there. And so knowing that there were terrorists behind, terrorists in front, he told everyone to follow him into this field. He knew the area very well, so he was going to try to get people out of harm's way. 30 of the 42 vehicles followed him, and 12 did not. The passengers in those 30 cars survived, but the other 12, this was their fate. And this was perhaps the most difficult thing that we saw on that trip in November. These are burnt out cars that were collected from Re'im, from 232, in a place where various carnage took place. Rafi Babian saved the passengers in those 30 cars, but the 12 who chose not to follow him, this was their fate. In this junkyard, really graveyard, forensic experts sift through the cars trying to find out evidence of DNA to try to see if there's any remnants of bodies that were burned or any other bone evidence, just to give families some their final closure or final notice. So this was just awful. We had the chance to visit Ofakim. I'm going to go back a couple of slides. Ofakim, hold on a second. Let's see. Ofakim is right down here. And you can see there are like these three towns that I had circled: Sderot, Netivot, and Ofakim. Sderot got hit badly. Ofakim got hit badly. Netivot did not. I'll get to that story in just a couple of moments, but you can kind of get a sense of how close everything. This is Be'eri, and Nachal Oz is up here. So Ofakim perhaps is best known the story of a 7-year-old woman named Rachel. Rachel me Ofakim, Rachel from Ofakim. So Ofakim is a poor town, about 15 miles from Gaza. When driving through, you can see that wealth and prosperity evaded this town. But a woman named Rachel Edry and her husband David, who live in Ofakim, Rachel used her charm and hospitality to save her and her family's lives. So she had been out in the shelter. When she went back in, she discovered that there were 5 Hamas terrorists who were in her home. And what did she do? She fed them. She gave them treats. She baked cookies for them. She smothered them with hospitality. Oh, you must be tired. Oh, you must be thirsty. Let me get you something to drink. All along the way, for several hours, about 12 hours, she was keeping them at bay and communicating with the police and the police and military forces outside her home, trying to let them know how many terrorists were inside, where they were. And it was really her her efforts and her creativity and her kindness that enabled her to save her life. Eventually, at about 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, October 8th, the police were able to burst through. All 5 terrorists were killed, but sadly 2 Israeli police officers died in the firefight. Again, you may have heard about Rachel me Ofakim, Rachel from Ofakim. You probably haven't seen, however, our pictures of her home. This is the side of her home, little with bullet holes. Across the street, when we were talking to someone from Ofakim, this gentleman was actually plastering over the bullet holes in his home, trying to get back to whatever a new normal is. You can see the pictures. This is the outside of her home right here. You can see the inside bullet holes kind of riddled on the stairway up there. Inside as well. And just memorials for the police officers in Ofakim who died trying to protect their town, who did save lives. Not too far from Ofakim is a place called the Adi Negev. It is really a town, a village for children and adults with special needs, and I'll share more about that later. What's interesting about this particular place is that it's just down the road from Ofakim, and while a lot of the areas on either side of this village, this village, this community for people with special needs, while things on either side really got hit and attacked, somehow this place was spared, either because the terrorists just drove by. It wasn't a target. They didn't know what was there. But thank God, because there were about 150 people in this place. There was no guard at the time. It was Simchat Torah. They were completely exposed, and somehow everyone, except one person, but everyone in this particular community survived. So on a map that I showed before, there was Ofakim, there was Sderot, which is right on the Gaza border. There was Ofakim, and in the middle was a town called Netivot. And Netivot had a very different fate than Ofakim and Sderot. Netivot is a town that has really been bursting through the seams. It is a growing town. At least from the outside, appears to be a much more middle class, maybe even upper middle class town. It also happens to be the partner city with the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia. So, of course, we went to visit. We met with Yechiel Zohar, who was the mayor of Netivot. He's been the mayor for 40 some odd years, and the city looks very different. So, he's a very charismatic and very tough figure. His whole line, he said to us, is that over the years, he would just tell the government, give me the money, don't worry about how it's spent. I'll spend it well. Just give it to me and don't ask questions. And because of that, they've been able to develop not only a very lovely town, but also a very advanced security system. You might be able to see on the left-hand side here. He showed us surveillance images of and what the cameras around town captured on that day. You can see that there are cars that are just lined up in this whole way, blocking entrance to the town. And he showed us a video of a car with terrorists speeding down this road. It took that sharp right turn, and people just sped after the car. Eventually, they caught up maybe a mile down the road, and the residents of Netivot were able to kill the terrorists and save Netivot and other places from getting attacked. Apparently, the Hamas terrorists were told, if you can't get into a town, just go down the road and find the next one. And you can see, from the stamp, it was 8:30 a.m., 8:29 when Netivot was about to be attacked. We had the opportunity to visit a hospital back in November. Went to the Barzilai Hospital, which is about 20 seconds from Gaza. We also visited the Soroka Hospital, the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, which is a massive center. It's the only trauma center in that area. Or sorry, Barzilai and Soroka are the two closest trauma centers to Gaza. Here we met with the COO of the hospital. This gentleman, I forgot his name, I'm sorry, previously directed Israel's COVID response teams. So he's basically Israel's Anthony Fauci. We also met some other volunteers who were there. What was also interesting is that, and we were talking about this shortly after the incident at Shifa Hospital, is that Barzilai actually sustained a missile attack in the days after October 7th. But it didn't make the news because nobody was killed because the hospital was fortified. And one of the things that we learned about sort of Israeli response and how Israelis protect their people is that if they need to, they can move all their entire operations underground. There are parking lots, 2 or 3 stories that go underground. In less than 36 hours, these underground parking lots can be turned into ICU, OR, and patient rooms. Each parking spot has access to oxygen, water, and electricity for monitors and other life-saving equipment. And these provisions allow patients to receive care below the ground while above ground rockets and missiles are falling. And you think if only Shifa Hospital had arrangements like this rather than Hamas tunnels that just ferry terrorists in and out and around underground. A little bit about resilience. And this was a photograph from when we met with the chief medical officer of the Soroka Medical Center. He was asking, anyone in the medical field who's dealt with trauma, and he's saying, so, what would be a mass casualty event in a typical hospital? Some people said 10, 12, maybe, 15, 20 cases or so. On October 7th, being, one of just 2 trauma hospitals in the area, 692 patients were admitted to Soroka Medical Center for emergency trauma. You can only imagine what it took among the physicians and the nurses, the entire medical team to treat to triage, to treat, to care for everyone and to provide a place for them to recover. Something that it's even kind of hard to get our heads around. Oftentimes, if there's a mass casualty event in a big city or somewhere here in New York, wherever, there are several trauma hospitals where people can go to. Not so in Israel. So I was talking about resolve and resilience. This woman is named Daphne. We met her in Ofakim in our November visit. And she was telling us about the work that she does to evaluate teens' mental health, especially after October 7th. But they don't really talk about mental health. They use the term resilience. She runs a resilience center. And what I thought was really amazing about her was that she herself has 4 children. This is back in November. She has 4 children. Her husband was deployed as a reservist in the north. He was on Miluim, on the Lebanese border, and which is from where she is, it's, at least 100 miles away. And she is spending her days caring for other children while her children are being cared for by family members. And that sense of people coming together to take care of each other's families, to take care of each other's kids while they're still taking care of one another, was so was amazing. We heard stories from our tour guide on that first trip. His name was Yona. Has 4 children, 3 of whom returned for reserve, 3 of whom returned for reserve duty. And what he was saying back then is that the tour guides were getting very little business, so he spent his day volunteering. Every day he would drive 2.5 hours from his home, a little bit north of Tel Aviv, down to a junction near Beersheba, where a group of volunteers, mainly run by Achim Beneshech, which is Brothers in Arms. This was the group that had been coordinating the judicial protests every Saturday night and the weeks before. On a dime, they switched over to become basically the group that was organizing, coordinating relief efforts, whether it was sending volunteers to pick pomegranates in the field or sending volunteers to go pack boxes someplace else or to deliver food to whatever it needed to do. And it was just an extraordinary experience that Yona was telling us about. This is one example in Netivot where we were before one particular place where people would just gather up the food, box it up, and then send it out. And one of the issues that Israel was facing, continues to face, is a shortage of farm laborers. So on this November trip, we had the chance to go and pick pomegranates for about 20 minutes, and we felt that we did a great job of helping the Israeli agriculture industry. It was that sort of short experience that made me think, like, man, I got to get back and do something more. And when Israel was attacked on October 7th, they had a very large contingency of Thai workers who did a lot of the agriculture work, but most of them returned back home to Thailand, and many were killed on October 7th. Some were taken hostage. They were also they were released, and so Israel faces right now just a huge shortage of agricultural workers. So any of these volunteer missions that are going, most if not all of them, are doing some sort of volunteer effort in Israel. Let's see, we'll go forward here. One of the issues that doesn't get a whole lot of attention is Israel's internal refugee crisis. About 200,000 Israelis, that was the number back then, it might be a little less now, but are out of their homes, whether it's along the Gaza border, in the kibbutzim and moshavim, in some of the towns, or those along the Lebanese border. So we had visited in Tel Aviv, the Crown Plaza Hotel. Some of you may have stayed there. It's often one of the hotels that tour groups stay at when they arrive in Israel. This entire hotel, when we were there, was being used as a shelter for about 400 families. And this particular organization called Dror Yisrael. Excuse me, Dror Yisrael. It's an educational organization whose mission is to build a just and shared society in Israel. They ended up creating educational programs and just enrichment programs for the many children who are out of their homes, out of a normal pattern of life. Who you have 4 people living in a small hotel room, and so educational activities, camp type activities. You can see this is one of the rooms where various activities were taking place. Yet Dror Yisrael provided some of the structure and educational content for the children who aren't living in their homes. Listen, the Crown Plaza was loud and bustling. It felt like controlled chaos. And everyone that we met was just trying to provide some sense of a new normalcy for these temporarily homeless children who, God willing, will be able to return home soon. But it wasn't just like the big hotels in the cities. So you can just get a sense of some of the activity that was happening there. A clothing rack for people to get clothes, the other activities, etc. This is the hotel in Kedma where we were staying in Sde Boker, which, as I said before, is about 45 minutes south of Beersheba. And there were a number of families there that we saw. We were there for 4 nights, and they were eating breakfast in the dining room and dinner in the morning. The lobby was bustling as the kids were getting ready to go off to school. They are living again in Kedma, way south. They have been evacuated from their kibbutz along the Lebanese border, and they've been there for 3 months. I met this young man. He's about 12 years old, and he was talking about wanting to go to Japan after his bar mitzvah. He loves anime. He had a really great outlook, a really and his English was really extraordinary. I was very surprised for someone who lives way up north and who doesn't have American parents. But it was very sort of matter of fact. We're living here, and this is what we have to do. And he's playing his video games and stuff like that. But you just kind of your heart just was torn open because of what these families are going through. And again, there's not a whole lot of attention being paid to them. So Hostage Square. This is probably one of the more well-known places in Israel these days that is really focusing all of its attention on the hostages. It's located right by the Tel Aviv Museum in a big open area, but its location is also directly across the street from Israel's equivalent of the Pentagon. It's military headquarters. It's basically the war center for Israel. And Hostage Square started out with one man who took a white plastic chair and a sign basically saying, free my son. And over the course of, it didn't take very long before dozens of people started protesting in that kind of sitting protest with him, sleeping out overnight. And now Hostage Square has become this extraordinary place for people to gather, for people to protest, for people to rally, for people to express themselves through art, and really for people to keep the attention on the hostages first and foremost in their minds. And like I said, in Tel Aviv then and now, just the reminders that the war right now is about getting the hostages home was very much clear and present. So you can see this is what day 33. I think it was 33. My screen is kind of cut off a little bit, and here I was on day 101. And this is the timer facing the military complex. So anytime someone comes out of there, you see how many days, hours, minutes, and seconds it's been. One of the most famous early images of art coming out of this moment was the empty Shabbat table. You saw a Shabbat table set with empty chairs, place settings. There were high chairs along the way. This is very powerful when I saw it in November, but it took on a different meaning when I saw it a couple weeks ago, where part of the table was set up as if hostages were eating a meal under the tunnels, just dirty water, very meager meal, sitting on plastic and concrete, still being held hostage. You can see the bowls are represented with a little bit of rice and hummus and pita. Just that reminder that while that the Shabbat tables that are empty, there are people who are still. This is basically what they're eating. So the way that they transformed it, I thought was very powerful and very striking from November, and then in January. And this is actually the break where it went from the table underground in the Hamas tunnels to the other tables. Another very powerful image from my November visit were these chairs. There were, at this point, 240 chairs. Each of them, you can see, have eyes up there, kind of looking at you, and a poster of the hostage who was held, and they were all bound together, and just stretched back, 100 feet or so. Just very, very powerful. When I was there a couple of weeks ago, the exhibit was removed to a different area, and just the remaining chairs there. You can see it's much smaller, but it's still a reminder that still at least 132 people are still being held. There's 132 who are alive as far as we know. The other part that was, this is some of the art there. Another thing that was striking between then and now is that this was this is a wall right on the street that had pictures of all of those who were being held hostage. And then when I was there, the next time, you could see there were spaces where people had been returned, or people who had been known to be dead, but who were no longer considered hostages, and their pictures were removed, leaving these spaces. And inside one of the exhibits, there's also a picture of 4 people who had been held hostage, and you just see them eating kind of normal meals, and just being reminded of that sense of normalcy post captivity, at least physical normalcy. Another, you can see some of these photos and whatnot. This was actually one of the more powerful newer exhibits that was there in January that wasn't there in November. An artist basically created a replica of a tunnel. You can actually walk through. I don't think I didn't have the video that was able to work, but you walk through this tunnel and it curves, so it's not like you can see the light at the end of it. And there are sounds that are emanating through, sounds of either gunshots or artillery or just other things that are happening, and just really tries to show you the terror that the hostages face as they either move through the tunnels or being held captive underground. This was right before Kfar Bibas's first birthday, and here is sort of a reminder that a 1-year-old now is being held hostage, and a 4-year-old, his 4-year-old brother, and his parents, if they're still alive, that is, and we're not sure. A couple of other pieces that are there. We certainly know that the international community has been just abhorrent in its way of recognizing the violence against women, rape and torture and sexual abuse. So we have this particular sign, Me Jew instead of Me Too. This is another artistic exhibit, so the Nova Festival with legs that have been shot and bound, hanging out of a tent. It's these reminders through art of just the sheer horror of this moment. And again, throughout Israel, these signs, Yachad Ninatzeach, together we will prevail. So fast forward a couple. Oh geez, I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I know I'm talking for a long time here. I'm going to fast forward to our JNF volunteer mission. So Jewish National Fund funds many important and impressive projects in Israel and in the South, really throughout the country. And we had the opportunity to visit many JNF sites and do our volunteer work. So as I said before, I felt the need to go. I was called to return to volunteer. And then about a week after I got back, I got this information about these JNF week-long missions, like 4 days of work, just to volunteer and really help contribute to Israel. I said I was going, and I put the word out to my congregation, and 4 of the folks joined me, and it was a really extraordinary trip. Our folks spoke about it at services on Friday night. They can speak far more eloquently than I can because of their really powerful experiences as first timers. So first of all, we were staying in Sde Boker, which is way down in the south. You can see it down here, really in the middle of nowhere, but also very far away from Gaza. So there was definitely a sense of safety. There was our group volunteering one day on the farm. So one day we were basically doing what needed to be done. So this particular day, it was an important but not as satisfactory day of actually like picking some weeds around vines at this very remote farm, this organic farm, along the Egyptian border, deep in the western part of the Negev. This is a farm that relies on volunteers, so we had the opportunity just to do some agricultural work there. You can see from this dot where we were actually located. The trip also involved important visits and important testimony to get a sense of what was happening. So while we did not visit Kibbutz Be'eri or Nachal Oz or Kfar Aza, we did have the opportunity to visit the cemetery that is connected with Kibbutz Revi'im, which is a little bit inland, probably about maybe 20, 30 miles inland from Kibbutz Be'eri. And this cemetery, which is used for the residents of that Kibbutz Revi'im, is being used now as a temporary cemetery for those who were killed at Kibbutz Be'eri. And within the course of a day or two, they were able to take some land from the cemetery, clear it out, and create temporary graves for those who were killed at Be'eri. Now, the reason why these are temporary is because all those who were killed, all their families, they want to be buried at Be'eri when they return. Most of those who were killed, I think there's 28 was the number. Most of them were in their 60s, some in their 70s, but there were these twins who were killed, and there were a few children who were killed. And just seeing graves of those of young people was just devastating. And one of these graves only has toys in it because they could not find any remnants of this child's body. So they put toys into the grave. A lot of the volunteering was just helping to pack care packages. There's the up in the Galil, these small businesses are devastated. So there is a project with the JNF where these nice little kind of artisan type supplies, jams, crackers, cookies, even socks and soaps are being packaged, and then they're given to delivered to hospitals. These are our folks kind of packing the boxes. So this is one of the ways that we were just able to provide something for those who are recovering in hospitals. We packed all these boxes, and then when we were at Soroka, we dropped them off, and we know that there were several hundred people whose days were made a little bit brighter because of the work that we did. We spent a day on an army base near Beersheba, packing up care packages for soldiers. A lot of things like ramen noodles and granola bars and other types of things that are better than the MREs that they're eating in the field. You can see, one person here, this is Mike, he's just putting stickers on boxes for 3 hours, and Brett and Brooke are just putting ramen in these boxes, the same repetitive action for about 3 or 4 hours. You kind of get a sense of this whole assembly line there. So just the fact that over the course of time, we're probably able to, I don't know how many, 10,000 boxes maybe even more over the course of a few hours. But the great sense of being able to give back a little bit. We visited an army base, the Tel-Nof Air Force Base, where this particular unit called Special in Uniform. These are special need. These are soldiers who have special needs and developmental disabilities. As you know, in Israel, everyone who is the age of 18 is conscripted into the army. Those who have special needs or disabilities are exempt, but there are many who actually still want to serve. So this unit, which is really the brainchild of one particular, if it's a captain or a general, has really been providing this extraordinary opportunity for these young people. They had a little concert for us, which was just a whole lot of fun. So Kibbutz Erez in the northern part, right next to Stair Road, you can see up here in that dot. We did some beautification work on this kibbutz. This is a gentleman from the kibbutz who was telling us a story. You would think that this kibbutz, being just 900 meters from Gaza, would have been attacked, but their security forces were prepared. They were able to keep the terrorists at bay. When they couldn't get into Erez, they went elsewhere. So this kibbutz was spared, but the army was using it as an entry point, so it got kind of beat up. So we did a little beautification project. This is, if you, we all said that, at our homes we have, we hire guys to do this, other people to do this, but this is what we did over the course of time. Planting some grass, planting seed, and then afterwards, this is what it looked like. So that sense of just helping beautify this kibbutz so that when people return, they will see something more beautiful even before October 7th. It was eerie being on a kibbutz that was empty. Kibbutzim shouldn't be empty. This one still was. But this little work that we did over the course of a few hours really felt like it was a great contribution. I've mentioned this before, the Adi Negev, which is this community for children and adults with special needs. Again, the brainchild of one retired general who has a child who has special needs, and his mission after he was he was discharged was to use his power, use his position to create a center that would help children like his, and it's grown into this, enormous and extraordinary place that has, great teachers, great resources, hydrotherapy. They have gardening, they have horse therapy. There's just a couple of pictures of us who are playing with some of these children whose needs are, each one has individual and special needs. You can see, for example, this particular merry-go-round. Kids who are, either in wheelchairs or who need to be held upright can actually use apparatus like this. Our trip ended with a visit to the Kotel, which is just a powerful experience. And then this was our entire group. So our JNF group, there were 5 of us from Shirami who went, but we joined 2 buses that were about, 60 people or so, people from all over the country. And, it was so successful that we have Rabbi Goldberg is taking another group in April, and we're looking at maybe going back again sometime in the summer as well. So this is the last vision from Sderot, and we say Lehitra Ot. So just a couple of, I think what I would say in terms of then and now, back in, November, it was a very heavy trip. I was anxious to go. A minute I got there, I felt whole. And once I landed on the ground, I felt at home. I felt safe. I felt secure. Even during the 3 sirens, there was never a sense of panic. Even when we were 15 seconds along the border, there was never a sense of panic. But that was a very heavy trip. That trip was about bearing witness and hearing stories. This volunteer trip was, yes, hearing stories, because everyone that we met has a story to share about October 7th. Even one of our original guides on the JNF trip, one day into the trip, got called up into reserve duty. He had to go. He was replaced with another guide. The lead guide for the trip was extraordinary. And we just learned a lot along the way, but we had the time to kind of bear witness, hear stories, but also do some important volunteer work. I think that because we were remote in Sde Boker and maybe not in Tel Aviv, at night there was a little bit of not just as heavy, but we know that for those who are on the trip, it was completely transformative. And for me, having the opportunity to go with one trip to bear witness, another trip to actually do some work, volunteer, was amazing. And I really hope that I'm seeing that a lot of synagogues and JNF and other groups are organizing these volunteer solidarity missions. So I would encourage folks, if you have the opportunity to go and you want to go, sign up for a trip, whether it's through your synagogue or through the JNF or another community. If you feel compelled to go, go. When people say, how could you be going to a war zone? As I like to say, we're not going to a war zone, we're going next to a war zone. We were, yes, while we did hear artillery at times, when we were kibbutz eras and some people were picking clementines and some people were working in the fields. We saw drones overhead. We heard some artillery. That was a little bit unsettling, but we still felt safe where we were. Never felt that we were in harm's way, and just being able to go, bear witness, hear stories, come back and tell stories, and also contribute to the life and vitality of Israel today is such an important opportunity, a great mitzvah, and I'm just really grateful that I was able to do this twice and perhaps even again in a few months. So I'm going to stop talking now. I am a rabbi, so brevity is not my forte, but I'm happy just to take any questions. If you have a comment, please end it with a question. Just one last thing I'll say. It was, this presentation tonight was really to focus on Israel. We have to just acknowledge that just the loss of life, certainly on October 7th, with 1,200 killed, and also the more than 200 soldiers who have been killed in Gaza so far is just heartbreaking and terrible. And we also know that Gaza itself is just under tremendous pain and suffering, with over 1 million displaced from their homes. 60% of homes in the northern and in Gaza City, North Gaza, have been destroyed. Depending on how you look at the numbers, whether it's a staggering number of people who have been killed, and trying to get our heads around what Israel needs to do in order to protect and defend itself, knowing that there's going to be a tremendous loss of life, weighs heavily on me, weighs heavily on Israelis as well. So as we kind of hold these two things together, that one can grieve for innocent people in Gaza as one also grieves for Israeli soldiers and Israelis. We just all hope and pray for an end to this war that brings the hostages home, that gets the worst of the leaders out of power in Gaza, whether through exile or through death. Quite frankly, I don't really care if Yahya Sinwar is killed or exiled. But again, no one knows what's going to happen the day after, and that's the part that is, that's sobering. But we know that the resolve and the resilience of Israelis will help as Israel continues to make its way through this trauma, and we build even stronger in the years ahead. So thank you for coming tonight and sharing. So comments, questions, I would say just please use the raise your hand function, because I really can't see everyone. It's kind of just, and you want to put something in the chat, you can as well.
Andy has a question, Rabbi.
Andy, go ahead, unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted now.
Mhm.
Did you
Yeah.
find that people wanted, you said everybody has a story.
Mhm.
Did you find people really wanted to talk to you to get more support? I don't mean physical support, but maybe just thinking about it, to have you be there and to have you tell other people, like you're doing
Yeah,
now. Tell
yeah.
the
I mean,
story.
really what's happening, because the further we get away from October 7th,
Mhm.
the easier it is for people to forget what happened on October 7th. And we're seeing, if you're watching American news and mainstream media, you're seeing images of new destruction every single day in Gaza. In Israel, we need to remember that what happened on October 7th. So people telling their stories is a way of keeping it very much in the forefront. I think that anytime you go to Israel in the future, October 7th is going to be part of the narrative because everybody in the country was affected by it. You either knew someone directly or you knew someone who knew someone. And it really is this trauma that has affected an entire country, from those who were killed and also those who have been displaced, either in Gaza or along the Lebanese border. So those who want to talk or talk. But then again, remember, these are groups that will bring people there. So
Thank you.
yeah, Lynn and Fred.
Rabbi, kol hakavod, thank you so much for having this and for going. So Lynn and Fred Paritsky, we know a lot of people on here who live in Richboro.
Mhm.
We're going on the same trip that you went on,
Oh, terrific.
February 10th, and there are 150 going with us,
Amazing.
and they're all sold out through the end of March, and they're booking through August if people want to go.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know that that Rabbi Eric Goldberg from Shir Me is taking a group in early April. Craig, I don't know the exact dates. I know that Craig Silverman is going, and there are several people from Shir Me who are going. So if you want to actually go with a larger, group of folks from our area, what's the date?
It's April.
7th
It's
to
April
11th.
6th. We
April
leave on
6th.
April 6th.
Yeah, it's the trip that leaves on April 6th. So if you're interested in going, all you have to do is just sign up with the JNF. You don't have, you sign up on your own directly. And I will say that JNF does extraordinary work. I'll also say the Federation does extraordinary work. One of the things that I didn't mention before is that our trip was organized by the Federation. We saw some of their projects going to Nitivot, and for me personally, it was very eye-opening to hear about the extraordinary work that's happening in Israel that our federation is supporting. And you see, I think our federation has raised about $14 million for emergency relief efforts, and they've been putting out sort of a ledger of exactly where the funds are going. So it's just really amazing what our community has been able to do. Again, JNF has also raised money as well, and to their building projects as well. So there's no shortage of good organizations and agencies that you can contribute to help support rebuilding relief efforts. Any other questions? Really? Any comments?
Rabbi, can I
Yeah.
speak up for a little bit?
Yeah.
So
For a short bit.
for sure,
That's
but
okay.
even though Rabbi Gaber knows that I'm not a rabbi, but I can talk a lot. So we have one of our daughters and son-in-law and 4 children live in Israel. They made Aliyah grandchildren made Aliyah almost 8 years ago. 3 of the 4 are in the IDF. So we're especially proud, excited, and scared. Our oldest grandson is a Golani soldier. He was in Khan Yunis and Gaza for quite a bit. We have one in intelligence and one in search and rescue who wants to train to be a sniper. So that's why I have no hair and it used to be gray. But your talk and the pictures really made it more real to us because we're going to be following your trip. When we had our orientation, it's all the places that you talked about and showed us. And
Are you staying? Yeah. Are you staying at Kedma or are you staying in Tel Aviv? Do you know?
We won't know until this
We're
week.
waiting for the welcome packet today. We gave them the rest of the money today, so now we're waiting for the welcome packet.
Kedma, it's a beautiful, comfortable hotel. Just change your money at the airport and bring everything you need. There's nothing there, nothing around there, but it's beautiful.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
You bet. You bet. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, what can we do here?
Hmm?
If you're not going, can we start working on some projects?
I mean, right now, what Israel needs more than anything is money. Like the JNF
Money.
told us, like, do not bring stuff. They have enough stuff. People are being discouraged from bringing bags and bags of supplies. That they have that. So contribute money, Federation, JNF, through if you belong to a synagogue, through your particular movement, the URJ and the World Union of Progressive Judaism supporting Reform congregations in Israel, the Masorti movement supporting conservative synagogues in Israel. All of these communities definitely need our help. The one thing that we'll talk to Rabbi Gaber about is that I know that there are some people who are survivors, either from Kibbutzim or from the Nova Music Festival, who have been coming to the States and doing speaking tours. I think that actually was talking to a colleague who has a couple of people speaking at their synagogue up in New York tonight. That might be something that we may be able to do. A lot of our congregations are bringing in experts to learn more. That Rabbi Dana Miller had Martin Raffel, who used to work for the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. He lives here in Langhorne. He's going to be doing something with us, Bashir and me, next Tuesday night. A lot of our synagogues are bringing people to talk and to share their stories. It's one thing to hear from someone who has been there as a observer, but one who was not directly affected, to actually hear from an Israeli on the ground. That's one thing as well. And also, I'm looking to bring the person who was our guide on bus one, which was the better bus. Always go on bus one, folks. His name is Elchanan Brown, the best tour guide educator that I've had. And I'm trying to bring him in to do a series of some lifelong learning, for us, and anything that we do, really anything that any of our synagogues do, are open to everyone. So we the rabbis here, the clergy, we all work well together. We share what's happening. We'll get the word out. So I think that's another thing that we can do as well. Yep, Aaron, Rabbi Gaber.
Yeah, I can't find my raise hand function, but I will also add, in terms of the Jewish world, purchase Israel bonds that provides funding direct to Israel to provide for infrastructure and the like. I would also say, on a political basis, write to Congressman Fitzpatrick and to our senators, to both Senator Fetterman has actually been in the forefront of supporting Israel, and to Senator Casey, and to let them know how you feel and that they should be pushing to approve funds so that and weapon sales to Israel. I mean, this is it's very much caught up in the politics of Washington right now. And so the more that we can reach out to our elected leaders and say to them, this is really important to ensure that Israel has what it needs to protect itself and to defend itself, is really important. I know we're not talking about, and it's certainly a real conversation to have about how Israel is conducting the war, but and what's happening to Palestinian men, women, and children who don't have anything to do with this, except they are displaced and suffering. And so those are a couple of ways that we can also help and do for Israel.
Great.
And I'm going to just, on behalf of my colleagues here, thank Rabbi Briskin for making sure to open this up to the entire community, and for being our shliach, be our representative for what, at least for me tonight, has been a very impactful presentation. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I know that Rabbi Anabazo Olevi from Colomet is going to be going in a couple of weeks as well. And and as folks will continue to share. Just want to share one thing. And thank you, Rabbi Gaber, for.
Pearlstein is there now also.
Who's there now?
Rabbi Pearlstein is.
Oh, that's right. Rabbi Pearlstein is there. Yeah. And Shelley, I'll get you 1 second. Just thank you, Rabbi Gaber, for mentioning, what Andy said is like calling our elected representatives, reminding them, thanking them for their support, and reminding them that we need their support. So yesterday I was in Washington, D.C. with a bunch of our teenagers for a social justice seminar done through the Reform Movement. And we had a visit to Fetterman's office to talk about some issues that were thanking him for his support of Israel, but talking about things other than Israel. We know that he has been sort of on the forefront there. What I did not expect, and I'm sorry I don't have this picture lined up here, but if you can see, I don't know if you can see what I have there. This is his reception area. On the wall behind his reception area are pictures of all of the, actually on the reception area and behind the waiting seating area, all of the hostages. If they've been returned, there's a little flag that says returned. If those have been killed, it notices that. But the fact that if you walk into his office, that is the first thing that you see. Is really it was the most powerful testament. A lot of the doors, a lot of the areas had, we stand with Israel, had folks on the hostages, but none like Senator Fetterman. So, Shelley.
Is there any consideration, or maybe it's going on, some type of outreach program, like with like the people that went over and spoke, share me, their stories were really powerful, to do this to the non-Jewish community, college campuses, even high schools, to let them know from, the Israeli and the Jewish point of view on what has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been invited to speak anywhere else. I'm not sure, Rabbi Gaber, if you have. We haven't. I mean, I haven't necessarily put myself out there to to our Christian colleagues to say, would you like us to speak? But no, I mean, I think that's an important idea. Things on campuses. I mean, that's really kind of the area of, because Hillel, I think, is also, and Birthright, I think, are starting to send some young adult missions as well, some volunteer and solidarity missions as well. So no, but I mean, yeah, it is important for us to hear, but it's important for our friends and allies to hear as well.
I can't find my.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay.
hand.
Yeah. If you can't raise your hand, just when someone's done talking, just unmute and just say hello, Rabbi Miller.
Hi, I want to thank you so much. I was very much looking forward, especially since you've been in November and very recently to reporting back from the ground. I also am just thinking about how you had said there was this big question about the day after, and that is very scary. One of the things that's bringing me some hope is a group called Standing Together, Omdim B'Yachad, because they're a group of Jewish and Palestinian Israelis who are trying to say, we've got to find a way to do this together in the future and now. And so I've just been following them too, just kind of trying to imagine the future starting now of ways of people communicating and finding solidarity with each other, because this has just been a national disaster for Israelis, and that obviously includes the majority Jews, but also others who live there. So looking for hope on people who are finding ways to talk to each other is another way that we can support that effort.
Dan, Rabbi Miller, that's the group that Sally Abed is one of the leaders of. Is that right?
Yeah. And they've come to a bunch of big synagogues in New York City and Boston and elsewhere.
Yeah, and I've heard Sally Abed on a podcast that I listen to called the Promise Podcast regularly. And she is an extraordinary, just extraordinary leader and sort of just observer and like person who can really bring the perspective of Palestinian Israelis to the conversation
In relationship with
absolutely.
So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Alrighty. All right. Well, thank you all if you have any questions you want to reach to me offline, Rabbi Briskin at shearmepa.org. Find me through our website, but also, those of you who are part of congregations, talk to your rabbis. I mean, we all, have plenty of, what to say, and, we all.
I don't really know what else he said except for what he.
What's that?
Oops.
Just keep your eye out for things that are happening in our community, and just really appreciate everyone coming on tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Yasha Koach.
Baruch Tiyah. Harry's getting a haircut in Australia. I love that. Harry is very, very devoted to us. I appreciate that. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. I'm gonna sign off now. All right, take care. Bye.
Take him. Here, he's